Um, Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be here to discuss this morning humanity-centered education as pedagogy for a sustainable society. We are from Japan and UK, but we are originally from various countries. So let me introduce our panel members. First of all, Professor Maria Gajardo is Vice President and Professor at Soka University, Tokyo, Japan. Her area of expertise is leadership with a focus on globalization in higher education. And Mrs. Deepti Shinha. Deepti is a master's student in International Peace Studies at Soka University, Japan. She is also an advocate for the Global Schools Program in Japan, led by the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network Youth Initiative, or SDSN Youth. And Mr. Alesse Nunes, he's a master student in International Peace Studies at Soka University, Japan. He's also a United Nations SDG content creator. And my name is Tessa Watanabe. I'm a postdoctoral student, postdoctoral researcher at UCL Institute of Education, University of London. I used to be a lecturer in Japan. And my research interest is the application of aims of education to school curricula. And our overall objective this morning is to discuss and exchange our views about transforming education through applying humanity-centered education in practice and in policy making. Okay, so our discussion starts with Maria, who looks at power of dialogue.
Good morning. Good morning. It is my pleasure to be here. I was just saying that sometimes I wake up in hotels and I'm not sure what country I'm in. Having arrived in India, my family is actually from Mexico, and I look Indian. So having arrived, I love that when I deplane, the flight attendant will usually say, "Oh, welcome home, ma'am," and I say, "Thank you so much," because it feels like I am home. So the title of my presentation is about the transformative power of dialogue for the purpose of raising global citizens. And I had to stop and ask myself, who were my first role models of a global citizen? And my first role models of a global citizen were my parents. Peasant farmers from the jungles in Mexico. They came across the border with 3 small children in tow and the clothes on their back, and that was it. Once they arrived in the United States, they had 3 more children. The 6 of us were educated in the United States. But seeing the journey that my parents took, journeying, leaving their home country to come to a new country, not knowing the language, not knowing how to read and write, but they came with that sense of they were pursuing their dream for their children. And they understood that that dream could be powered through education. And so us today here at this conference, we are here because we believe that education can be revolutionized, can be transformed. And one of the first individuals that I was attracted to was Amartya Sen, because he said, even as an economist, as a philosopher, as a Nobel laureate, the equivalent of having won the Nobel laureate in economics, Amartya Sen said, education is at the heart of a child's well-being. So it's not GDP, it's not all these other economic indices, it is education. However, there was a caveat. He said it's education where the child understands the purpose of their life. They recognize the value of their life. So it's not education, we're not here to transform education just because. We are here because there is a purpose towards this act. And one other educational philosopher from over 100 years ago, Tsunatsubaro Makaguchi, was an educator in Japan, and coming out of the war, He wanted to revolutionize, he wanted to transform education. He wanted to go from a militaristic perspective to a humanistic perspective. And his question was, how do we create value? How do we create value in our life? How do we create value in the lives of others? So taking up this banner of looking at value creation, I began to inquire if we're going to move from what we know has not worked, what we know has struggled, if as educators we're going to move the bar to transformation, we're going to have to change. We're going to have to do something different. And so this is a picture of me at the age of 6 months, seated on my father's lap in the labor camp where I was born. 6 months old, and at that time, my parents, their hope was that we would not have to work in the fields, right? Their hope was that whatever education system I became a part of, that it would give me a better life. It would contribute to my well-being. But in order to get to where I am now, which is in Tokyo, working with Japanese students, working with international students, I have had to be that product of change. I have had to ask the hard question, for what purpose do I pursue education? For what purpose am I an educator? And so to that end, I began to explore what ways do I see change happening? As a professor, I absolutely love teaching. I learn so much from my students. And part of what they have taught me is that transformative education results when there is a relationship and a sense of reciprocity. I learn from them the way they learn from me. And Paulo Freire, who was a Brazilian educator, talked about education as a political act. He said education is not objective. Education is not passive. True education is transformative. It is, in fact, an act of consciousness raising. And he said that dialogue can be the vehicle, can be one of the pathways to contributing to this transformation. But then that begs the question, so what is dialogue? Dialogue is developing trust. Dialogue is seeing the other. Dialogue is having an opportunity to be authentic, to share your story, and to be who you are, learning how to listen. So in this process, I was determined to infuse dialogue as a transformative experience with my students. And to that end then, as I began to teach courses on democracy and dialogue, courses on global leadership, leadership theory, which is what I teach, I began to ask, how do I integrate this process of learning, this experience? My job in a 90-minute class is to create a transformative experience for my students. And dialogue is one of the vehicles that I use. And so in this, I also ask students to reflect about the experience, to reflect on the insight, the takeaways they have during that class period. At the end of the semester, I ask my students for reflection essays. And one of my students from Pakistan, in fact, wrote these words in his essay. And he said it was that human-to-human connection that occurred through the process of dialogue in the classroom that he discovered who he is as a human being, as a student, as a visionary. And so my question is, how can we then move this forward? So if I'm going to use this experience to connect head and heart, to value myself and to value others, what I would like to suggest is to recognize that there is a process, but it has to have certain steps. So I borrowed from the Sustainability Development Goals that have the 5 principles for SDGs, and I adapted them to transformative education. So what are the 5 principles that we need to follow, to adhere to think about in order to be able to create this transformative experience? So the first element, the first principle is purpose. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. In education, we have to know where we're going. We have to have a vision for where we want to take our students. So what is your purpose? What is your intention? Second, it's about relationships. Yesterday, one of our speakers spoke about common sense, and he used it in a way that slightly different than how I understand it. Common sense was what my parents valued. They weren't educated formally, but they valued common sense. They knew what was right. What I would say to you is that common sense has become uncommon behavior. And our job is to make it common behavior once again. So we have to be able to develop relationships with the purpose of becoming a better human being. And then to take action. This isn't about theory, it's about applying. It's about what you do in the classroom, about contributing to life. Number 4 is about potential. It's about recognizing that we want to actualize the possibilities that emerge from an educational experience. And similar to what my parents did for me, I want to be able to do for young people today, which is to allow them to discover what their potential is. And so for the 5th P, I'm going to ask our supporters on the side to prep the video. But what do you imagine that the 5th P would be? So I've talked about purpose, I've talked about people, I've talked about practice, and I've talked about potential. So what do you think the 5th P would be? And it's the most difficult of the 5 principles. Any guesses? Purpose, practice, play. Let's watch this video. So, the 5th P. Perseverance, persistence. It's about not giving up. As educators, we have our plates full. We have the world in front of us, and we are wanting to contribute in order for that transformation to occur. And I can tell you that the road is long, and the burden feels heavy at times. And there are times when we want to stop. There are times when we want to give up. But just like that little person who kept going and going, I understand today that it's persistence and perseverance. If I have my goal in front of me, I can then support that in my students and their goals. But you have to be aware of the CAVE people, C-A-V-E, Citizens Against Virtually Everything. Right? Those citizens against everything are going to be the ones who are going to say, oh, that 3-day conference you went to, we already did that, doesn't work. Or that 3-day conference you went to, yeah, big ideas, but we don't have money for that. Right? There's going to be individuals who will want to stop your optimism. And what I would say to you is that we need to keep going. So yes, if we want to really harness the power of dialogue, we have to be able to look at purpose, build relationships, practice, have intention, and be able to see the potential in ourselves, the potential in others, and to persist. Because what I've learned at this conference is that this work is not about me. This work is about these young women. The young women who have an exhibit down the hall. The young women who said to me, Miss, come see our multi-purpose, multifunctional agricultural model. And I thought, oh my gosh, what did they build, right? And they were so proud, and they talked about working as a team. They talked about our teacher believes in us and we could do this. They inspired me, and so I go back to Paulo Freire's words, that it's about developing deep reciprocity in the work that we do with our students, in the work that we do with our colleagues. It's about creating these connections that allow us to harness the power of dialogue in order to transform education. Thank you so much. And we have time for one question. Each one of us will take one question at the end of our talk, and then at the end of the session, we'll have more time. So, is there one question right now that someone would like to ask? Yes, ma'am.
Out of all 5 P's, what is the most wanted P in that?
I'm sorry?
All 5 P's that you have just listed out, the most advocated P from your side.
Purpose. I need to know why I am doing what I'm doing. And I would encourage you to also start with that. Thank you so much.
Maria, now Dipti is going to talk about transforming education based on humanitarian competition.
Okay, so I'm going to begin with a competition. It's a very small competition which I thought to do. So everybody has their phone right now? Okay. So we are going to do a 30-second game in which you have to write 15 names of your friends whom you made in the last 2 days of your tech. So I feel that you guys must be playing the compassion game. So the timer will start for 30 seconds and you have to write 15 names or maybe less than, like how much, whatever you can write, and then we'll see that who will be the winner. Okay, so we begin. So you have to write 15 names of people whom you have met in tech conference in the last 2 days. So they can be your friends, the friends you have made here, your colleagues, anyone. Okay, is the game clear? Okay, so I'll begin the timer now. So you can start. 30. Go, go, go. You have to win. So you can write my name also, anyone. Okay, it's done. So anyone who made to 15? Anyone to 10? 12? Oh wow. Anyone above 12? How many? 13. Anyone above 13? Okay. How many? Wow, amazing. So basically, why I did this game, just to make all of us understand that the kind of anxiety we feel when we are put into a competition. So I come from an engineering background. I did my engineering in computer science, and it's been 25 years which I feel that I've been constantly put into pressure, put to compete with my friends, and first for marks, then to find a good job, then to find a good husband and get married to a millionaire, which I end up doing nothing. So I feel that this has been something which is very close to my heart. So I came up with this presentation on changing the complete logic of competition in our life. So I feel that is competition something that we should be instilling in our students? How many of us say yes? Anyone? So, okay. So we believe that competition is something that we should be instilling in our students. Okay. So let's take it forward. My presentation will be on transforming education based on humanitarian competition. So this is my class of peace studies. I'm a student at SOCA, and we are 13 students from 9 countries. So I thought just to give So I'm just right there. I'll be covering what is humanitarian competition, why it is needed in the 21st century and in the schools and universities, and how we can implement it in the education system to achieve the sustainable development goals. So personally telling from my life, I think competition has not been a very good thing for me. I lost my self-confidence. I was constantly being compared by my mother. Oh, why don't you get marks? Look at your cousin, she's getting 94%, and you are still on 67. So it was starting from like when I think woke up, and then till the 12th, and then getting into an IIT, which I never got into, and then getting into a multinational company, which never I got into, and then getting a good husband, which I got, fortunately. So I'll start with the success, that what is the definition of success, which is actually written in dictionary. So I just looked at it, and it is accomplishment of an aim or purpose. So what if the purpose of education dismisses? If the purpose of education, we as educators doesn't even know that what is it, why are we educating children? What is it that, so Maria Sensei said that the purpose of education is the most important element. So what if the purpose of education is rote learning, which is happening? Instead of, and what if there is a sense of competition which is happening among the students, in which they lose their self-confidence, they lose why they are studying, and what if it's just about gaining knowledge, which we can do it from the Google also, and earning money. So all of this is important, but I think what I'm trying to convey is everything comes down to that how can we change the sense of competition, our logic, and make it even more humane. So Rabindranath Tagore, the first Nobel laureate, so he said the highest education is that which does not merely give us information, but makes our life in harmony with all existence. And Dr. Daisaku Ikeda, the founder of Soka University, he said that the essential responsibility of education is to foster the minds of youth, a love for humanity, and a spirit to dedicate oneself for the sake of people and for the society. So these two are very relating thoughts. So just to share that how does this connects to sustainability. So the greatest challenges right now that we are facing is extreme poverty, conflict, wealth inequality, and nature and environment. So when we come down to the 5 P's of sustainability, there is a sense of competition that we have to achieve sustainable development goals by 2030. But how can we learn to collaborate and we can achieve peace? So the idea here is we are competing in the class, we are making the students learn about sustainable development goals, but the ultimate goal is peace and collaboration. So actually competition starts with the very first thing where the child when enters into the class. So in the class, then it moves to the job, then economic competition, then we have military competition, and then we have the political competition also. So we are seeing this sense of competition prevailing in all aspects of society. So idea is how can we transform it and can be fundamentally recast into a contributive mode of mutual striving for excellence, in which a child, instead of competing with the other child, they do things in collaboration, in which they both are able to bring out their fullest of potential. So I would like to quote from Makiguchi. So Nesaburo Makiguchi is the founder of Soka Value System, and he talked about humanitarian competition, in which he said, so his research was geography of human life, where he touched upon humanitarian competition, and he said that to achieve the goals that would otherwise be pursued by military or political force through the intangible power that naturally exerts a moral influence, in other words, to be respected rather than feared. So I was just thinking that when I was in school, was I fearful of getting marks, or was it more of that, oh, I'll get respect when I'll get marks? So it all comes down to, are we doing things out of fear? That, oh, I have to protect my country, so Trump has to protect his country from other countries, so he's increasing his military power, he's increasing his nuclear power. So the point is, Are we trying to understand that we are a part of same humanity? Or we are trying to be fearful of other country, other people, and it comes down to the very basic, which is education. That what are we instilling in the students? So this idea resonates to Hazel Henderson, and he said that what is important is to set aside these egoistic motives, striving to protect and improve not only one's own life, but also the lives of others. One should not do things for the sake of others, because by benefiting others, we benefit ourselves. This is generally our mind, that we think that, okay, I should do this because this might benefit. So what is the purpose? I think we are coming down to the same. So this humanitarian competition actually is seen in various places. So leaders have been practicing humanitarian competition. So de Klerk and Mandela, they are excellent examples of leaders who desire to create a society in which all people are victors during the apartheid movement. There are many institutions which are practicing humanitarian. So there are many, but I've just listed 3. So Soka University is one of them. International Partnership for Energy Efficiency Cooperation and International Renewable Energy Agency. So I will come down to the role of education in promoting humanitarian competition as a socio-emotional learning. So basically education is very important, because what the leaders will become in the society, it comes down to what they are being fed in the in the geography or in the history class. And then how humanitarian competition education is a way for achieving the SDGs. So we all know that as Sustainable Development Goal agenda is not just one country's agenda. 192 member states sat all together and they made this agenda. So it's not just one country will be able to achieve it. So if we have to think of achieving this entire agenda, the entire world has to come together. But if this competition is between the countries, we'll never be able to achieve this goal. And as per the recent social economic index report, the goal of SDGs is pushed to 2073, 43 years after 2030. So what is it I think we can do to engage the entire world, and especially the students and the universities, so that instead of they investing energy in fighting among themselves or competing among themselves, they collaborate, make a team, and do something about. So one of the case study that I took was, because time is running out, so I'll directly come to the case study which I took from my own university. So I'm in part of this club, Climate Action SOCA. So recently, I got this training from Vice President Al Gore from Climate Reality Project, and we created this club in SOCA University. So basically, this club was started by 7 people in SOCA University, and these 7 students come from different backgrounds: law, peace studies, and FILA, that's liberal arts, and now it's close to 90 students who are involved in it. So idea is, what they are doing, they are engaging into different activities, like completely banning plastic from the campus, or ensuring that they have more vegetable meals or vegan meals in the campus, because beef and lamb, they have a very high carbon footprint. So they are working for climate change. And these are, so before doing this, there was a survey basically done of 104 students, which were Japanese and international both. And they said that, yeah, they really feel that environment and all these activities, they feel responsible for it and they want to do something. So that's how it started. So 95% people said that. And these are few of the pictures of campaigns which is being led by Climate Action SOCA and initiatives. So there have been climate strikes, which I think in India also it has been happening. Greta Thunberg, I think you all know about it. So idea is that how can we change this idea of competition? And I just thought that maybe I'll just close with this line, because I feel that these 4 flowers are just like 4 individuals, are like 4 children. So it can be like cherry, plum, peach, damson, and they all possess equal potential and an intrinsic value. But if we keep on comparing the damson with the peach and the peach with maybe plum, we'll lose that plum or we'll lose that damson. And that is, I think, something which is very important right now happening, that we are talking about competition in terms of marks. So over these 2 days, I was understanding that many of so Shelza was one of the persons. She talked about that how in assessment there is a competition, how can we change that? And then in marks. But as an educator, I think I'm myself a student, so I'm trying to understand that how everyone can come together instead of competing with each other. And it starts with the school. So that's where I think I'm done. And that's where I want to end. Thank you so much. Okay, so one question. Anyone? Yes, please.
Is there any inclusive education system in Sustainable Development Goals? No?
I beg your pardon?
Is there any inclusive education plan? Is there any inclusive education part in the Sustainable Development Goals?
Is there any education?
Inclusive education for special ability people.
Okay. Yeah, there is, I think I had a slide also on that. Education is actually very central to achieving SDGs. Without education, we cannot achieve SDGs because all the agendas, they cut through education. And education is something very central. So I actually had a slide. So if you go on the Global Partnership for Education, they have prepared an entire research that how education is central, and they have created a map of all the sustainable development goals related to SDGs, and it comes down to it. So if you want to teach children about climate change or poverty, how will they act upon it? So it's connected like that.
Any programs for special ability people, sir? Any in the education system?
Any?
In educational system, any sustainable development goals is represented any special programs for special ability people in the sustainable development goal 4?
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not aware about it, but I'm going to find it and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy. So the phrase of humanitarian competition might sound new, but actually it was introduced decades ago. Okay. So now Alesse is going to discuss transforming education through dialogical global citizenship education.
Hi everyone, how are you? Thank you for today, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. And my topic today is find the intersection between dialogue and global citizenship education. And I'm talking to you about two very amazing men, Paulo Freire and Daisaku Ikeda, in perspective and trying to understand his ideas. But first of all, I changed my last question for one minute exercise, okay? Can you do it together? Then the idea, stand up, all of you, please, very fast, and find one pair. It's impossible to stay alone, yeah, one. Sit beside one person. Dipti, find one for you. Okay, do you have one? Then you can sit, yes, together, you talk. And to talk, you need another person besides you, okay? Talk together. Okay, you can sit. And I will ask a short question for you, and please, share your idea with this person besides you, okay? After 3 days, you are here for 3 days and observing a lot of content, then please do share with your pair one good idea that you have to transform education in India. Your idea, okay? You have 30 seconds, your pair have 30 seconds, and then you can share your idea, how to change education here in India. Okay? 30 seconds, let's go. Talk to your pair. Your idea to change education, one easy and creative idea how to change education.
Bro, you can come here, right? One idea, come on. I would say I will remove this ranking system. Ranking. Instead of giving rank 1, rank 2, rank 3, I will give them their negative feedback about their negative points. What are they lacking? What I will that so they will improve in the area.
taking pictures. Okay. I know that we have a lot to share, but we are on time. Then that's the idea of dialogue, and I came from Soka University. Soka means value creation. And value creation, okay, thank you. Value creation is about be educated to be happy or create value during your interactions in your daily life. And it's my belief that dialogue is the perfect tool for you to create value and to be happy and to interact because of the capacity of dialogue to humanize people. When you connect, when you share, when you are together with others, you are sharing ideas, you can really, really create value. Then dialogue needs to be the most important skills for the 21st century, and that's idea of Soka University. And in my research, in my thesis, I'm connecting dialogue, global citizenship education, and the SDGs. During this year, I participated in the 3 biggest SDG events around the world, in Bonn, Germany, Tokyo, and United Nations General Assembly. And my conclusion is that the next 10 years, United Nations and governments and a lot of stakeholders, they are really, really concerned about SDGs attainability. How is that possible to achieve so big goals around the world? Because we have a lot of problems. Then my idea and my model, my contribution to this question about SDGs attainability is this circle in which I put dialogue in the core, or changing in individuals' ability to talk, to interact with others, using global citizenship ideas and dialogical ideas, and starting with courage, wisdom, and compassion. Then I will explain after what's the reason for these 3 points, and recognizing their realities, engaging in dialogue with others, and empathize, the capacity to have empathy for others, and using power, the power of hope, of dialogue, of connection, and imagination. This individual, empowered with all of these ideas, the individual can really, really change their reality and in multidimensional ideas and multidimensional possibilities. Multidimensional is simple to understand. From you to your local community, to your national realities, until global issues. Then I will explain in detail what's the meaning of this idea. Dialogue in education is not something new. Comes from 1980s, from Jane Veller. And the main idea is a shift, a changing in the meaning of learner. You are a passive learner or you are an active learner. Dialogue is the tool to change and to make you become an active learner, okay? Transformative education, the main idea of these 2 men, Daisaki Ikeda and Paulo Freire, is people, individuals becoming fully humans. Fully humans from this perspective, from their perspective, means you acquire the capacity to change your reality and to connect, to engage, and to learn how to have dialogue and produce changes in your realities from your local community, again, until global perspectives and global dimensions. Paulo Freire changed the education in Brazil, in my country. Because this sentence is quite interesting. I didn't understand anything because of my hunger. I wasn't dumb. It wasn't lack of interest. My social condition didn't allow me to have an education. Then he started doing a kind of education that affects behavior, or mutual respect, open communication, because from Freire's perspective, in Brazil at that time, education was like a banking education. Teachers just transferred the knowledge for students. Then that's the reason it is a passive learning for students. And he changed this idea. For him, it's need a critical consciousness about your reality. You need to understand what's the reality you are in, the mutuality between you and others, your capacity to engage with others, your belief in humanity. He was a Christian educator, and for him, faith in humanity is something very, very important. And again, a kind of dialogue that his main idea is a culture circle. You sit and talk. Then professors, teachers, they went to people reality, people's village, and start to create circles and start to talk about their reality. That was Freire's classes. It's not about only people inside the class and learning, and observing content, but it's on their realities. It was very important for Brazil on that time, and it is until now. Daisaku Ikeda's ideas is human revolution, or a kind of inner transformation in individuals based on global citizenship and dialogue ideas. Then for him, he's connected to this deep-rooted in the psychology of individuals, changing the individuals from his inner until outer space, until the other dimensions. Yes. And the 3 points of Daisaku is the compassion that never abandons others to suffer alone. This idea is quite important. The wisdom to perceive the equality and possibilities of life, and the courage to make our difference the impetus for the elevation of our humanity. These 3 points is the core of Daisaku Ikeda's ideas. Then his model is based on courage, compassion, and wisdom, and the ability to learn, to empower, and to reflect about your reality, and understand the interconnectedness between you and your environment and your economical, social, political situation, and use your imagination, use your empathy. You can understand, you can act, start to act for people around you, surrounding you. And for him, it's quite interesting. His idea is that individuals that have put in their own lives, their personal lives, global goals. It's something global, it's something related to the entire planet, but I need to be educated to put this agenda in my daily life. That's Ikeda's ideas. And then I am conducting a survey in 4 universities, and I organized this 4 universities from Soka University until Mackenzie, is a Presbyterian university, according to their curriculum related to global citizenship and dialogue, okay? Then here, Soka University, they have more ideas and more texts related to global citizenship and dialogue, and Mackenzie, they have less. Then I just want to show some slides about my conclusion from this survey. Here, on a scale of 1 to 5, do you consider yourself a global citizen? And as you can see, the majority of them, yes, students consider that, yes, I am a global citizen. But the problem is what is happening with their education inside the class. Do you consider that your level of empathy for international people is higher today than before you entered this university? Soka University and UNILA, that's both, yes, higher level of this empathy, and the last 2, no, low level of empathy. Because they aren't learning about global citizenship and dialogue, then their level of empathy is low than who is learning about this point. Then, how often do you think about global issues? And students, they are thinking, they have a lot of ideas, good ideas about global issues, but the problem is inside the classes, they don't have space to promote dialogue and to learn and to interact and to participate in projects about global issues and sustainable development ideas. Here in your classes, have you learned about SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals? Soka University, 77%, UNILA, 42%, APEC, 0%. Simply in 3-4 years, learning, they learn 0 about global issues, about their realities around them, and their countering their possibilities for changing related to SDGs. Here, does your university help you to have a better understanding of SDGs? Again, the two first university, yes, and the last one, no. My university, my environment of learning is not helping me to understand social realities. Not only my community, but in global perspectives. And the last slide is not here, but interesting question. Are you happy here studying in this university? And the same result, who has more global citizenship and dialogue, a better environment for dialogue, they are happier than the others. Then everything is connected in this research. So, my last slide is that my idea of multidimensional cosmopolitan dialogue is learners becoming fully humans. And fully humans is about change your perspective about yourself, your community, and use that for change realities surrounding you. And on September 20th, I went to New York for United Nations General Assembly, but on Friday, Greta Thunberg was there, and we did a protest for climate on that time, on that day. And the New York police, they was expecting around 5,000 people that day. That was what people said to them. On the day, was there on the streets 250,000 people. And it's very interesting. At the end of the protest, we go to a big garden, and a lot of students, a lot of people talking and leading that movement. And then I was very happy because I was being lead for young people, 12, 13, 14 years old, 17 years old. They were there on the stage and talking very, very amazing and interesting and smart ideas and how to change our realities. Then this new generation, they are learning more and more, and you need to do more for helping them about this topic, because they have all the skills necessary for that. We just need to create a space for them to have dialogue about all these topics. Okay? Thank you for today.
Thank you, Alesse, for your inspiring presentation. Well, the significance of dialogue is still underestimated in education, I think. Now I'm going to talk. I'm being busy this morning. I haven't seen a moderator for moderator panel as well as doing a presentation, but now I'm going to talk about the central issue in education policy making, introducing the concept of sociological study of education called policy sociology. I want to use. Well, historically, well, there are two schools in the UK in terms of sociological study of education in the 1960s and 1970s. One is Oxford University School, and the other one is UCL, Institute of Education, University of London. These two schools share the common purpose of study, which is providing solutions to social problems in education. More specifically, inequality of opportunity for education, which often caused by economic differences between social classes. Providing solutions to social problems in education is a fundamental interest for the sociological study of education. And there appears to be a very important link between the issue of inequality of opportunity of education and the Goal 4 of SDGs. The Goal 4 states to achieve inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So in order to achieve the Goal 4 of SDGs, it's very important to provide solutions to social problems in education. Based on the fundamental purpose of sociological study of education, the concept of analyzing education policy was introduced in 1980s, which was later called policy sociology. Through policy sociology, a critical issue was revealed in education policy making. Alexander, he's a British researcher in the field of education. He looked at the implementation of local educational reform in a city called Leeds in England. Well, his conclusion is a rather shocking one. Well, through his study, he concluded that governments and state departments are not ideal education policy makers, saying questions about how to teach are not for government to determine. And also, some research studies revealed the inefficiency of governments and state departments in education policy making. They found the issues such as role of power, power struggle, and tension system. They call the issues in different ways, but actually they all suggest, or they all indicate the same issue, which is the relationship between politics, government, and even inspectorate in education policy making. This can reflect the inseparability between education and politics. So we have seen the issues in policy making at local level and national level. And there is also an issue in education policy making in the context of globalization. It's a fierce competition between nations in relation to raising the standard of education. Some governments, research studies showed some governments change the contents of their national curricula according to the changes in international tests, such as PISA. And also, policymakers' concern is this international test because it's a ranking system of countries in terms of education. But actually, however, PISA international test is run by OECD, as you know, and their priority is economic growth and not humanistic growth, actually. So I'd like to summarize the issues in education policy making we have looked so far. The issue in education policy making is there are issues in education policy making at local, national, and even global levels. And also, this is a shocking summary, but government and state departments are not ideal education policy makers. And the purpose of policy sociology is to seek solutions to social problems in education, but research studies of policy sociology only identified the issue in education policy making. And there's little practical discussions to address the issues. And I think this is a limitation of policy sociology as research methodology. And now I'd like to introduce Daisaku Ikeda's education proposals and his ideas. There are education proposals made by Daisaku Ikeda since 1960s, and some of his ideas in the proposals have been actualized in the society. Today, I'd like to focus on the two critical ideas in his education proposals, which are independence of education and humanity-centered education. In his idea of independence of education, he says education ought to be independent as state power along with legislation, justice, and administrative authority. These groundbreaking structural reforms would not only provide solutions to the issues such as power struggle in policy making, but also it will create the society that value education most highly. And Ikeda also argued humanity-centered education reform is critical in order to develop children's totality, creativity, and internationality, saying education, and I'd like to look at these three elements totality, creativity, and internationality in education, because these three elements can also contribute to foster global citizens. About totality, Ikeda highlights the significance of links between all things and the shift from individuality of knowledge to totality of wisdom. And about creativity, Ikeda says, in order for creativity to flourish in children, it would be essential for the learner and the teacher to cultivate their characters through hard work. And about internationality, well, he says being a good citizen would not be contradictory to be a global citizen. And that suggests being a global citizen is not only being able to speak many languages or visit many countries. Because in Japan, people tend to think to be global citizens, they need to be able to speak English perfectly, or, well, to be able to speak many different languages. But actually, being a good citizen would not be contradictory to be a global citizen. And probably it's a good question to consider why it is not contradictory to be a global citizen. Why being a good citizen would not be contradicted to be a global citizen. So these three elements of humanity-centered education reforms, totality, creativity, and internationality, can also contribute to foster global citizens. And there is a movement to actualize Ikeda's education proposals. In June 2016, the first World Summit of Educators took place at Soka University of America, and it's being held. And the summit has had delegates from 32 countries, and the declaration of the World Summit of Educators was adopted as Ikeda proposed. So in summary, we need to continue discussing these groundbreaking ideas in Ikeda's education proposals, which have been existed since 1960s, and apply them, and we need to carry on discussing to apply them into practice in order to transform education. Because these ideas surely lead to create the society for education, not education for that society. Thank you very much. So since I'm the last speaker, so I'd like to straight go into the Q&A session. So if you have questions for all the speakers and all the presentation, we welcome. So the lady at the second row.
Thank you. It's amazing to hear all of you. I'm dwelling on a couple of thoughts, so I want to hear your opinion on what I'm saying. It's been told that Denmark is has the highest happiness quotient in the world, and they stand the topmost. But I've also heard, I'm with you when we talk about global citizenship, but I've also heard that they're not very welcoming with immigrants, neither are they people who accept everybody together. The world as as everybody being a part of it, they are happy by themselves. I've also read the book of Ikigai about Japan, where it is about a community of people coming together and being happy, and that's why there are also people who live longer. I'm trying to understand, is global citizenship basically an advocacy of saying communities, be happy within your community and increase your sphere of compassion? Is that what you're trying to say with global citizenship? Is that the core value that we are trying to look at?
I'll start. What I would say is that I would start with what is the core value of education. And to me, the core value of education, or the goal of education, is happiness, not superficial happiness,
I
which
agree.
is what you're
Yes, I agree.
saying. I don't know about superficial, but deep, unshakable happiness, which really begins to reflect the inner core of individuals.
Yeah.
And so I think that happiness quotient and how it connects to global citizenship, for me, it is a part of, but not all-inclusive. So for me, global citizenship also means, how do we position ourselves in the world? How do we begin to engage, not only with issues, but with people outside of our inner circle? So as Tessa was suggesting, whether we leave our country or not, actually is not the point here. It's about how we begin to focus and frame the world that we live in.
So it's about increasing my sphere of compassion and being compassionate to not just my own self and my family and my community, looking out to everybody else. That's what is advocacy. Yeah, thank you so much.
Can I just add one information about this, about happiness? Is that happiness in education, mainly from Ikeda Daisaku's perspective, individual happy student is that one that can or learn how to change their reality. It's not only about well-being or good feelings or this kind of based on individual. The idea here is, that's the reason happiness is connected to courage, compassion, and wisdom. All of them together, changing the mind of that student in order for the student can change their reality. Then to have this power, this capacity, this, being aware about this possibility to change reality is the main point of happiness here in education. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, gentleman in the white shirt.
Thank you very much. My question actually connects very much to my friend's question here and the conversation we had together, but it's linking the concept of dialogue and challenging intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So really doing what you want to do rather than what people tell you to do, with competition as the drive. So my question for each of you is a question that I would love people for the next part of the conference, while they're interacting with other people, to ask if they had the opportunity. So rather than asking, what do you do, which I've been asked maybe 1,000 times in the last 2 days, and I'm really appreciative of the question, but I think often people are looking for the answers, what's your educational status or your income status compared to mine, and then continuing the conversation. But my question, I tend to ask people is, what are you passionate about? And if for education for me is about harnessing and developing this passion and giving the tools to follow that passion. So my question to you is, what are you passionate about? And it doesn't have to be related to education.
What are you passionate about?
Today, yoga. Sport. But tomorrow it might be different.
I'm passionate about many things. So I'm a musician, I'm an engineer, but in a nutshell, if I say, I really am passionate. I cannot see people sad in my environment. So it starts from my family and then it extends to my friends and everyone. So I think I'm really passionate about happiness. I cannot see people suffering. And I really, so if I say a bigger goal, I want to rid the world, like rid misery from this world. So I think that's where I come from. So I'm passionate about happiness.
In these last 5 days, I'm passionate about India. India is amazing. It's my first time here. And I'm very happy to have this opportunity to be here, talking about education, about happiness, about global citizenship, and to interact and to connect with Indian people. They're mainly food. Indian food is amazing, and culture and dancing. And the capacity of Indians to be resilient about a lot of social problems and maintain their ability to smile and to really connect. Then for me, education is exactly this. It's something alive. When you connect with people, when you have empathy to understand cultures and to understand people, then it makes you the feeling of happiness and increase your ability to collaborate in some way with what's happening surrounding you.
Thank you. So can I say my passion as well? Yeah, because that's a great question. And then I have my passion in my personal life and in academic life, and it's totally different. Yeah. Well, in my personal life, I think my passion would be to explore food and different food from different countries. So, it's my very first time being in India, but I'm really enjoying staying in India, exploring food and culture, get to know people. This kind of thing is my passion, and I really enjoy the most. And in my my academic interest, in my academic life, my passion is, like I said earlier, my passion is about how to apply the aims of Soka education. Soka means value creating. So how do we apply the aims of value creating education to national curricula or school curricula? Because the concept and the thoughts and philosophy of value creating education is being already practiced around the globe, in Japan and in the US, in Brazil, in Singapore and Hong Kong, and also in India here. But it needs to be discovered more, and it needs to be known by many more people. So I'd like to not promote, but I'd like to let the society and let the world know about value creating education through my articles and books. So that's my passion. So thank you.
My passion is opposite of Tessa's. It's the same. Private, public, professional, it's the same passion. And that's, I want to know your story. I want to know who you are. If you're from Bhutan, if you're from India, I want to hear you. I want to see you. I want my heart to connect to your heart. That's my passion.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It was really interesting to hear about the power of dialogue, and as an educator, I've been utilizing it with elementary students that I have been teaching for the last couple of years. But then the entire idea of how do you dismantle the power dynamic which comes within dialogue. Like, let's say, the entire movement which is being built around the blue ticks and social networking sites, and how do the people that have those, their voice matters more. Also in educational policy making, even if the educators are engaging with those at the helm of decision making, their voice doesn't matter that much, and that's the intrinsic idea that falls into the paradigm. So what have your experiences been in terms of engaging in dialogue and dismantling the idea of power dynamics, and just ensuring that dialogue is more inclusive?
I love the question.
Thank you.
The very first thing I do is teach my students how to listen. How to listen. And after 15 weeks in a semester class with me, if I ask them to reflect on what did you learn, what's your most important takeaway, it doesn't matter what the content of the class was. Inevitably, they will say, I learned how to listen.
Yeah, I just want to share something interesting. I'm studying Japan, and the Japanese educational system is not based on dialogue, definitely, but Soka University is trying to do that. But in the same university at Soka, sometimes I walk to the corridors in some floors, and when I saw a lot of Japanese classes, and teacher talking for 1 hour, 1.5 and the students, half of them was sleeping during the class. And I said, oh, that shocked me. I said, how is that possible to have this kind of education? It's not here, it's around the world. At the same time, I had a lot of amazing classes. Then I was in Maria Sensei's class, and it's amazing. The environment is completely changed. It's totally different. When you have a space, when teachers create this space for dialogue, something amazing happens that naturally flourish, a lot of energy, a lot of connections. Then my idea is not necessary to create a framework or how to have a good dialogue. Just create a space, just put people one in front of another to talk. And obviously, as a good teacher, you conduct that, you encourage them, but as Maria said, you need to listen for them, and naturally it happens. That's my opinion.
Okay, so the gentleman at the front.
Hi. My question is regarding PISA and its reliability. So every day we hear and read something about Finland's education system, but PISA ranks it at number 16 in the last ranking. So is it about PISA being completely unreliable, or is there something which we are missing? Is the world's so-called, I don't know, so-called or not, best education system not producing world's best learners?
We are educating students today for jobs that do not yet exist. Think about that. We are educating children. We are educating young people for jobs that do not even exist. The jobs that will be available in 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, 70% of those jobs are going to be brand new. So I think PISA is assessing those skills for the jobs that have existed. So if you can understand it from that perspective, it makes all the sense in the world. For last year, this is how you ranked. I want to see the assessment for the jobs that do not yet exist. And when we've asked worldwide, top corporations, top industries, what are the 5 skills that you need for the new incoming workforce? They are very clear. We need individuals who know how to work with one another. They need to know how to work on a team. They need to have great communication skills. They need to have a global perspective. They need to be able to converse in the language of English. So we know how to, I think we need to challenge ourselves to revisit the past in order to launch and revolutionize the future.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Because it's too bright. Sorry if you keep raising your hand and I don't pick you up. But there's a Ask Me Anything session in the late afternoon, so please come. So, gentleman at the front.
Thank you. Respected dignitaries on the dais and respected participants here, I would like to take this opportunity to know how we can leverage this fantastic forum. Take, in my case of India, how can I deploy this? Because I have been studying these SDGs, but it's only individually. We don't have anything such kind of awareness on, even in international schools, so-called international schools. Don't know. No one educates on the SDGs. Unfortunately, as they was going through some articles, they say SDG 5, quality education, SDG 4, something. So it's great to know at least now. We are far behind. And when the UNESCO is spending a lot of money and the countries are spending a lot of time and efforts, glad to have all of you from the various countries. You are leading us in the global citizenship. But I would like to take this opportunity as we are winding up today. So how we can take it further? At least we can start from, we need to start from the schools in private sector as well as the government sector. Like we have a national anthem, we should deploy, we should plan such a way that SDGs are global anthem. Otherwise, where we are and where we have to be, it's going to be a never-ending circle. So we have to be continuously conducting these sessions, but it will be in vain for us. So because in Indian culture, we have a chanting in Sanskrit, Tamsoma Jyotirgamaya. So which means that God, we are praying you to lead us from darkness to the enlightenment. So that's a simple line, but it has a well decoded, a well embedded deep logic. So whether you are a PhD or whether you are in elementary school, So everyone is in pursuance of learning till the end of the life. So I request you all, I don't know even how to track India's SDGs, where are we? At least for the sake of Andhra Pradesh, the previous government has initiated a CM Core dashboard, and they have done a website, APS Vision, where they're tracking the state's economic development as well as SDGs. So they're comparing where are we in happiness index. So even they started a portfolio for happiness to track. And so this is one thing I would like to request you all on the forum, kindly connect with the government, initiate a global anthem kind of stuff, or make it a global SDGs, make it a part of curriculum. Otherwise, you are spending a lot of time and money. At the end of the day, we are polluting all those SDGs. They should be by heart. That's one thing. And secondly, I would like to know, as we study in the management, there is a Maslow's needs hierarchy theory. So that global citizenship comes into the practical experience when we consider the reality of the nation, like Finland tops in education, Japan tops in innovation, so India tops in service sector, China tops in manufacturing sector. So everyone has their own SWOTs, strengths, weakness. If I say someone who is struggling for the food for today or tomorrow, so they may not be interested in SDGs. Like we have to consider the reality, sorry.
So thank you for that question. So how do we promote SDGs so that it becomes as familiar, as popular as a national anthem?
So there are many ways to do that. I think Alessi and I will touch upon it. So one very simple thing I would want to advocate, in fact, to everyone. Thank you for the question. So I'm really passionate for SDGs the way you are. So there is a recent division being formed under Sustainable Development Network of Youth. So it has been formed under of United Nations, and what they have done this year, they have hired 450 advocates from around the world. So in India, we have 25 advocates, and the division that they have formed is Global School Program. So you can just Google it, www.globalschoolprogram.org. So this program basically has designed the class plans from grade 1 to grade 12, and this class plan is basically designed by Professor Reimers from Harvard. So this is because the major problem is the teachers doesn't even know how to teach the SDGs. That's a major problem. So first, to teach the students, we as an educators must know how to teach sustainability through geography, through arts and music. So that can be, I think, one of the source which can help the teachers to like go all out. So these class plans and everything, so they have class plans, TED videos, quizzes, puzzles, everything which actually creates a space for the student to learn about sustainable development goals, peace and sustainability. Second thing, maybe Alessi, you want to share?
Please, we have about 2 minutes, so if you want to just quickly.
Yes, as my survey showed, when students, they are in touch with global citizenship ideas and SDGs, they become happier. Because it's very interesting for them to learn not only about the small perspectives, but learn from global perspectives. And based on my experience, I went to Bonn in Germany on May. It was amazing that 1,700 people for 3 days, the majority of them young people, debating and talking, having dialogue about global issues. And the environment there was amazing. And it's interesting because they need to learn how to deal with that. That's the reason I agree. When you create this space for having dialogue about your inner transformation and global transformations, then everything starts to be different in that educational environment.
Okay, thank you. So one last question from the gentleman. Yes, thank you.
It may be the last question. My query towards LSC nuance. You have talked about dialogue education. Now, one of the goals of the sustainable development is the quality education. Quality education. So, how do you link, or how do you develop a relation between the dialogic education to that quality education in India?
Okay, if you understand, if I connected dialogical education with SDG number 4, quality education, it's interesting because the SDG 4.7 is, their description is quite interesting. It's about global citizenship, education, and lifelong learning. Because all my ideas here is based on lifelong learning, that education not only as a process inside schools, inside classes, but as a learner, that learner that acquire, grasp their realities, understand their surrounding, and based on that core skills that I shared, start to make transformation, waves of transformations in their realities. And then, yes, this connection is quite clear for me, and it's very important to, my idea is to connect both, exactly how the point of intersection of these two main ideas, these two good ideas.
Okay, thank you very much. So we would like to summarize our presentation this morning from each of you with a few words, please.
Well, my conclusion and my last idea here is that, yes, it's possible to have dialogue in education, and the kind of dialogue that allows students and learners to change their perspective from passive learners to active learners. And when you do that, this changing in this perspective, a lot of the environment changes, a lot of interesting connections and ideas and things happens in the environment of school. Then for me, this is quite interesting. And more than that, it's amazing to be here and talking with you and to see how all of you are interested in this kind of discussion.
Hello. Yeah, so I would summarize just in few lines that I think humanitarian competition right now is very much needed, and not just to achieve, I think, sustainable development goals, but I think like to live in our communities with our friends and everyone. So the challenge is that how to put this into practice in the class and in our community. So I think for that we have to really rack our brain that how can we put this concept of humanitarian competition into the class. So one of the case study which I showed, I think, is we are really putting forward that people from all backgrounds, different diverse backgrounds, are coming all together, irrespective of whatever, and they are trying to unleash their potential in their own respective fields. So one can be from law, another can be an engineer, and they are coming up with something and achieving a thing which is much greater than what they are fighting for among themselves. So if we could crack this within the class, I think the problem that the one country with another, or India and Pakistan, or these are facing, that can really be solved, because the competition will not be among countries, it will be more on a humane level, that together what we can do for humanity.
Okay.
So we just have 10 years to do that.
My takeaway from this session and from the last 2 days is that it starts with me. I need to be that change maker. I need to be that ambassador for SDGs. And before I arrived, I didn't feel that way. At this moment, I feel that way. And I challenge all of you to embrace that spirit, to become the ambassador for SDGs. That is the path to revolutionizing and transforming education.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for coming and for your attention. See you all in Japan. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You were a lovely audience. So please stay back